What's going on, everybody? Special guest here. It's Clay Harbor, former NFL tight end. He was in Mobile, Alabama, here to talk about a couple former Hurricanes. Clay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's I'm in New York City now, but had a great time out there at Mobile. A lot of great players, offensively, defensively, guys that raised their stock, and guys that had a 2022 stock market crash. So it was good for both players and coaches, and saw a lot from these guys out there.
Yeah, former Hurricanes tight end Will Mallory. We'll start with him. Also, Tyrique Stevenson got some buzz too. So, two former Miami guys, not the heavy draft prospects as we've seen in years past with Miami, but these two guys are certainly looking to make their names and get drafted and have long careers in the NFL. First, with Will, obviously, with you playing tight end, what stands out to you about him and kind of how he looked this week?
Well, the first thing is he's big and fast. Like he's a big guy that can run, and that's still hard to find out there. He can run, he can catch, and he's got that size that these NFL scouts and organizations love at tight end. He's a guy that's 6'4", 250 plus pounds. That's what they look for. So he's got that. I think he's more like 240, but he's got that size, that height, and he can maybe put on a little more weight. But that's the typical body that you want at tight end.
You touched on his speed. What did you notice with his speed? Anything surprising or getting away from some of the defensive players?
Yeah, I was very surprised. I mean, the kid can run. He's got some wheels. And I first saw him like, wow, that's a big guy that can run. And there's another tight end down at Mobile that impressed me too, Luke Musgrave, and both those guys. I'm like, these guys are some big guys that can run. They can sink their hips. They're athletic and they know how to catch the football. Will, I think he's learning how to block still and figuring some technique things out, but he gives effort. And a lot of the tight ends today that can run like that, they don't give the effort. He's probably got to bulk up a little bit to hold up in line, but he gives good, strong effort. He's not a guy that's timid or afraid, and that's what a lot of these NFL personnel men and scouts are looking for.
Yeah, he's certainly a guy that showed off his speed at Miami in flashes. We saw him kind of get downfield a little bit. 115 catches over his career, 42 this past season. A guy that played at Miami 5 years. He really put in the time, played for a lot of coaches. Clay, with his blocking, what do you see with that? And can you expand more on that? Because obviously, it certainly seems like that'll be a question mark for him moving forward.
He's a tall guy, and he's not the biggest and bulkiest, so it's going to be tough hanging in against those defensive ends and those edge defenders. It's just hard. It's a hard game for a tight end playing in the NFL at that level. He does a good job of giving effort, but he's got to get a little bit better, a little bit stronger, maybe stay a little bit lower and have better drive there, be able to sink his hips and really get in those blocks. But the number one thing for me there is if I'm an NFL scout and I'm watching him, I want a guy that I know I can coach that gives the effort. So he showed he does do that, and he's going to keep fighting. And I think he impressed some people with his attitude as far as his blocking is concerned, because he was sticking his head in there for sure.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you could lay it out what the week looks like. They practiced 3 times, but for people that haven't been, obviously a lot of fans of the Senior Bowl, we see a lot of the video clips and information coming out. The game is Saturday, 2:30 Eastern on NFL Network there. But maybe can you walk it through? What kind of things do they go through during a typical practice week that you saw?
Yeah, it's you'll have interviews with all the players and all the coaches. The coaches that are there, the scouts will come in, interview the players, and kind of try to put a face with the names that they've been watching on film, and really get to see if these guys are intelligent, are they smart, are they going to be able to pick up an offense? So that's a big thing that people don't really know about, is the interview process is big for these guys. And then the other thing is the practices are probably more important than the game, just because you get to go through all the different drills. You're getting to see him in a one-on-one blocking drill, one-on-one pass catching drill, one-on-one pass blocking drill, run blocking. Get to see him in all these different situations and really nail down what they're good at, what they need to improve on, and how they'll project to your specific system come the NFL. So that's kind of how this thing works. Is the practices are way more important than the game. The game still matters, but the practices is where most of the hay gets put in the barn.
And certainly at that tight end spot, it just, to me, seems like it's just a very interesting, challenging position with your matchups. going against defensive players, either that are faster, just with size situations. What do you, maybe your own personal experience, but the biggest transition getting into the NFL, playing that position? I know we touched on blocking specifically with Will, but maybe in general, the tight end spot, the keys, and maybe that transition.
Yeah, it's when you're making the transition from college to the NFL, it comes down to a lot more technical game. You're not going to be able to get away with just I call it out athleting people. Just you're a better athlete than some guys in the college level. When you go to the NFL, that doesn't really happen. Everybody you're going against is an athlete. Everybody you're going against is a player, is an all-star from from their college. So it's just more technical. You got to make sure your feet are on the ground from the tight end position. Make sure you get your hands inside, and then it just becomes a fight, an attitude thing. And that's from Will. What I liked is I think that's half the battle in my time in the league is the guys that want to block, that want to improve, want to get better, the guys that do. The guys that pigeonhole them and say, hey, I'm a receiving tight end, I don't need to block, or I'm a blocking tight end, I don't need to catch. Those are the guys that don't last long. Got to be able to be versatile and fill a lot of different roles.
And cornerback Tyrique Stevenson, a lot of buzz, it seemed like, coming out of Mobile. What would you notice with him? What stood out to you? How do you do?
Tyrique Stevenson's a player, and I was more on the offensive side of the ball, but he was a guy I'm not even looking for, and I was popping. This guy's locking up guys right and left. He was, very physical. Seems like a bulky guy, physical guy. He recovers well, and I think he can handle a big receiver. He's a guy that's explosive, can get in and out of his breaks, and he's been playing well. I mean, I think he's up there probably with any cornerback that's been playing this week. He's been doing a lot of good things out there, and for me, a guy that's not even looking for him, offensive player, he's popping. I mean, these guys are struggling to get open against him.
You touched on the bigger receiver, obviously getting to that next level. There's a lot of big receivers doing well at the next level. How important is that for a team to have a guy that can be physical, that can kind of match up against those top receivers?
I think that's big because you got to be versatile. You got to be a guy that can run with those scat receivers, and there's a number of those at the Senior Bowl, and then there's big receivers too. So you got to be able to do it both because that's what the game has kind of become. And the offensive coordinators are so good at putting you on specific matchups that they want. If they see that you can't guard a big guy well, they're going to exploit that. So the fact that he can do both, he's a physical guy, I think that increases his value because it's a premium. When you got a guy that can run around with a quick slot receiver and can also move outside and guard a 6'3" Mike Evans, then that helps. So that's something that's really improved his stock as well.
You said obviously paying attention to the offensive side. Was there something that you heard or saw with him? You touched on his recovery speed. Was there a play or moments with him that just kind of stands out to you for the week?
I'm not able to pull anything from my head, but in person, I noticed it, and I remember I wrote down his name, and I went back and on film when I'll see somebody pop, I'll look up the roster and I'll say, that's the guy that I kept doing that over and over again. I'm not even trying to look at the cornerbacks. I'm looking at wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line. That's kind of my expertise, being an offensive player my whole career. And I see, I go, who's this cornerback? I mean, man, this guy keeps showing up on tape, and that's the thing that you notice about him. He kept showing up, get beat, great recovery, in and out of breaks. I mean, physical guy. Maybe every cornerback was getting a little handsy there, but maybe a guy that might get called here or there, but overall I was very impressed.
I want to kind of go back to your NFL career a little bit in Jacksonville specifically. You played with some former Hurricanes. Any memories of these guys? Brandon Linder, Alan Hearns, Stephen Morris was there. Even a Storm Johnson played at for a little bit there briefly in Jacksonville. Anything that stands out to you with those guys playing with them?
Yeah, good guys, man. Alan Hearns, just a diligent worker. A guy that's just going to put the time in, the effort in. He's in there before practice, after practice. Undrafted receiver. And I remember he came in and he started in our first game. Guy, he's not even a draft pick. Jerry Sullivan and him just would work diligently. Hearns, just a quiet, hardworking, genuine guy, just a really good dude. And Linder was a buddy offensive line tight end, and Linder was a dog. He's a guy that's going to play hard. He's going to play the whistle. If you're a defender, you don't want to play against Brandon Linder. He's coming. He's not going to stop all game long. He's going to keep bringing it for 60 minutes. And both those guys were just hardworking, true professionals.
And Will being from Jacksonville, Will Mallory from Jacksonville area, what does the Jaguars tight end situation look like? Maybe a possible destination for Will, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. They're losing Evan Ingram, and I don't think they're going to let him walk. He's a free agent, but they can franchise tag him if they want. They're going to try to sign him to a longer term deal. But right now, with Evan Ingram, that's kind of the role that Will would fit. I think is a receiving guy that can run, catch, and can be in there in the blocking game. But if Evan walks, he's a free agent. I think that spot's up for grabs. You got Dan Arnold along with Evan Ingram as a solid tight end. Arnold's a do-it-all guy. He can block, he can catch, but they would be missing that Evan Ingram speed. And that's something that Will, I think, could come in and fill.
Clay, man, your time is valuable. I appreciate you dropping the insight. It's great getting that perspective from someone who was there. So thanks for your time, and we'll take care.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. Have a good one.